Around the year 2200, Earth was suffering from severe climate change, from climbing CO2 emissions, rising temperatures, and microplastics contaminating the oceans. The planet was dying and becoming uninhabitable. Thus, humans were forced to leave their home behind, and the start of the Exodus began. Governments and powerful organizations began building arks in hopes of finding a new home. And within 2 centuries, Earth was completely abandoned. Not all were lucky enough to board an ark, though. Only those chosen would be able to leave the dying planet. Ships were constructed wherever possible. Over the next 200 years, humans on the asteroid settlements constructed arks wherever they could, some being constructed in orbit, on floating ocean dockyards, on the moon, and even on Mars. And while these arks were intended to help humanity find new life, they were also to preserve human history. They contain relics of human life, trying to save whatever remained of our past. But more importantly, the arks were supposed to contain those who were given the privilege of passage. Global aptitude tests determined who would contribute the most to a new extrasolar colony. Engineers, scientists, logisticians, wilderness specialists, and inspirational artists were some of the favored to get a spot on the arks. And alongside the chosen, of course, the rich were a guarantee, even building arks of their own, filled with lavish commodities instead of people. These arks were possible because in 2070, an entropy drive had already been constructed as an experimental spacecraft, and this would become the foundation for the ark's designs. Many different arks were built, and there was competition to both secure spots on the arks, but also between different contractors. Resources were dwindling, and society as they knew it was collapsing around them. Many were left behind, and many arks were destroyed by those who resented being left behind. It was a game through and through, and surviving the journey was harder than getting a seat. Many arks never arrived at the Centauri cluster, and were lost to the void. Some arks even fell apart, and some lost many of their crew. Some people in the arks became spares, never even woken from their sleep, but their bodies became vessels for spare organs to keep the engineers and crews of the arks alive, since they were the only ones who knew how to repair them. Ark life was rough for most, with ark ships falling apart from faulty, decaying construction or severe overcrowding and running out of resources. Some arks found planets, but they were hostile or uninhabitable for human life, and some of the arks didn't contain just humans. Alongside humans, arks also contained robots, AI, and awakened animals. There were often awakened animals of varying species that helped maintain these arks, and these were genetically modified animals, created with the intent of fulfilling a job. There were raccoons that could help make repairs, or pigs that worked as security guards, and even octopus that could communicate and act as doctors. Most of the ark's histories and the stories of the people on them have been lost to time, being pieced together by mementos and journal entries, and many sleepers who did arrive have fragmented memories of their past, so a lot of ark history is unknown. But what is known is that the journey was rough and harsh, and a lot of people did not make it. By the time the ark ships arrive around the year 18,000, it had been 16,000 years since Earth's exodus. It had been a long journey, but they finally found the Centauri cluster and its many habitable planets. Finding a possible new home, they sent out the green world signal to remaining arks, which would summon them to the Centauri cluster. And this marks the beginning of the Dawn Era. Humanity has found a new home. These first ships that arrive slowly colonize the Centauri cluster, and quickly they begin settling interstellar societies and empires. During all of this, new ark ships from Earth are still arriving after receiving the green world signal. Unfortunately for those arriving, things have greatly changed, and they are struggling to find their new place in their new home. Over the next 8,000 years, the Centauri cluster evolves and changes, and that brings forth the Remnant Era, which begins around 24,000. This era is defined by the rise and fall of empires and the rapidly changing humans that now call themselves Celestials. The humans that first arrived in the Centauri cluster have now used genetic engineering to alter themselves, becoming different types of transhumans over thousands of years. Even their descendants splinter off into dozens of more divergent species. These Celestials, as they are now called, see the still arriving humans on the Ark ships as inferior. They are primitive, backwards, and lesser than. And when the humans arrive, they find that Celestials have completely dominated the cluster and are fighting for even more control, leaving very little room for the new humans. This fight for power and control results in the formation wars that begin around 28,000. These wars cause massive amounts of damage to the cluster, and hundreds of habitable worlds are completely obliterated. During this violent warring, Ark ships are still arriving, and these new humans are relegated to backwater worlds by the Celestials. Some humans were enslaved or exploited, and very rarely did the Celestials actually help these new humans in this new world. But the difference is clear. Celestials are no longer humans, and their humanity is gone. They are not allies nor friends, and most humans avoid Celestials at all cost. As many habitable worlds, known as Eden worlds, were destroyed during these formation wars, humans try to colonize worlds that are either abandoned or ignored by the Celestials. But often these planets are hostile and dangerous, some even trying to kill anyone who steps foot on the planet itself. Humans fight to find a new home during this time, and from the destruction of the formation wars, thousands of worlds are destroyed, and billions of lives were lost as the celestial dominions fought for control of the cluster. The cluster itself was almost eradicated from the devastation of the war itself. Entire civilizations were wiped out, and despite all of this, human Ark ships are still arriving. Some Arks find ruins of lost civilizations and empty worlds, and on these planets that have been destroyed by the formation wars, they find ancient ruins, both human and celestial, and these have been long forgotten and abandoned. If they're lucky, they find advanced technology that can be used to help their own human civilizations. But sometimes they find ruins of horror and suffering, and planets only filled with death. 2,000 years after the formation wars begin around the year 30,000, the Elohim, a powerful celestial species, rise to power, and thus the Crucible era begins. The Elohim are the most powerful and technologically advanced celestials in the galaxy, and little is still known of them today, as they vanish shortly after their rise. When they were in their position of power, they molded and shaped the entire Centauri cluster, and their influence still remains. Both celestials and humans are bound by the laws of the Elohim. These laws are created after the formation wars to prevent future warring, and are a small collection of fundamental rules, treaties, and agreements. And those across the galaxy fear breaking their laws and fear the consequences. And while the Elohim are known for their involvement in establishing peace, they are most known for their largest contribution to the galaxy, the Gates of Heaven. These gates are a network of pathways linking all of the various systems of the cluster, and their gates change the entire cluster itself. Before the Gates of Heaven existed, interstellar journeys were dangerous, unpredictable, expensive, and inefficient. Travel and trade between systems was very limited and unreliable, and this means that the different celestial dominions were isolated from each other, and they did not communicate amongst one another. This was a major contributing factor in the hostility of the formation wars, and why the Gates of Heaven changed everything. The gates are bound by the speed of light, but also offer different levels of acceleration and deacceleration from light speed. This is what causes time dilation, and changes the amount of time passed per each journey through the gates. The Gates of Heaven made travel extremely easy and accessible, and with established charts and navigation through the gates, ships are able to explore space across the cluster. Alongside creating the Gates of Heaven, the Elohim also use their extremely advanced technology to move hundreds of habitable planets to completely new systems, reforming the entire galaxy itself. The technology to move these planets around was called the Archimedes engine. This engine stabilized orbits, controlled atmospheres, and terraformed barren worlds into new Eden worlds. The Archimedes engine and its work was a catalyst for a population explosion across the entire cluster, bringing thousands of new habitable worlds for life to flock to. The Celestial Dominion seized the opportunity and wasted no time expanding their empires, creating vast networks of colony worlds. The Archimedes engines were powerful, but with that amount of power, an engine failing can be catastrophic. A world being supported by a failing engine can collapse within a single generation. Entire civilizations can be wiped out almost overnight. And with the creators of the engine gone and unable to repair them, inhabitants of worlds dying due to failing engines meant only one thing: they must abandon their planet. Much had changed within the system, and the Archimedes engine had changed the entire cluster. And alongside this, the Celestials were changing as well. Shortly after the beginning of the Crucible era, and after the Gates of Heaven were created, the newly formed Imperial Celestials, a species of Celestials that reside in the core of the Centauri cluster, use the gates to explore and expand their species. In 3180, 6 pioneer ships are dispatched by 6 family houses of the newly formed Imperial Celestials. They settle on the edge of the Poseidon Nebula, and here each major house, Kelawon, Virak, Wynid, Bassa, Nizinsk, and Cheluli, claim their own planetary system, and together they sign an economic and politic treaty that establishes the Crown Dominion. The rulers of the 6 houses rise to become queens. With the Imperial Celestials rising to becoming the now Crown Dominion, power is again changing within the cluster. And these new Crown Celestials are the oldest and fiercest. They are experienced in war, and alongside their advanced technology and skills from years of warring, they are formidable and dangerous. Each system is ruled by a now and forever queen, and these queens pass their memories and consciousness from queen to queen, and they are essentially immortal. Each new queen inherits the memories, knowledge, and wisdom and experience from all past generations, and through this power and knowledge, they rule with an iron fist. But even still, they too, like everyone else in the cluster, fear the Elohim, and thus they too abide by the laws established by the now vanished Elohim. Why the Elohim vanished is unknown. Some believe they are pure energy, containing no corporeal shell. Some believe they left the Centauri cluster to explore other parts of the galaxy. And some believe they are still present amongst those remaining in the Centauri cluster, but that they hide their existence from lesser beings with advanced technology. Or maybe they simply went extinct like many other empires. Wherever they are, their laws remain absolute, and those who violate the laws find their ships are no longer able to use the Gates of Heaven. This is considered the ultimate punishment. These lawbreakers are cut off from the interstellar trade and travel, and the consequences are dire. Economies collapse, scientific advancement is stunted, technology begins to degrade, and resources become scarce. Being cut off from the gates means complete isolation. And while the isolation can last anywhere from a few years to a few centuries, some societies do not survive this isolation. Roughly 5,000 years later, in 35,118, war breaks out in the Crown Dominion, as the now and forever Queen of Kelawon, Zuberi, attempts to evolve Imperial Celestials further. She is met with resistance, and the other 5 queens form an alliance and invade the Kelawon system. Their queen Zuberi is killed, and her entire family is slaughtered, with rumors of only one of her princesses escaping the massacre. This event causes the remaining 5 queens to sign the Imperial Accord, which tightens their governance over the Crown Dominion by establishing the position of Empress. Under this new position, each one of the 5 now and forever queens will rotate serving as Empress, and each Empress will serve for 60 years. The Empress will manage the economic and political policies of the Dominion and be responsible for its defense. Where the once now and forever Queen of Kelawon once resided, before her slaughter, now they use as a throne for the Empress. Kelawon's habitable planets, wealth, and resources are distributed among the 5 queens in their houses, and anyone loyal to the fallen Queen Zuberi flees Kelawon. Once peace amongst the queens and Empress is now established, the Accord begins a long period of stability within the Crown Dominion, and the Crown Dominion becomes even stronger. The stability of the system remains for quite some time, until the present era of 41,500. Celestial dominions are expanding and creating countless new cultures, but their civilizations have begun stagnating, alongside their technological advancements, and this begins a decline for the celestial dominions. While this is happening, fleets of human arcs from the Exodus era, almost 40,000 years ago, that have been following the Green World signal, begin arriving to the Centauri cluster. The humans on these arcs expect the worlds they were told would be there 24,000 years ago, but instead they are met with the celestial dominions and find a world where humans are mistreated and discarded. Humans are not allowed to settle on Dominion worlds, and instead are relegated to find their new homes on war-damaged remnant planets. And this brings the rise of the Aslan dynasty. During the Elohim's reign, they moved several habitable planets across the cluster, including the planet of Lydon, which was once a moon that was placed in close proximity to a gas giant in the Malakbal system. Long-lost human arc fleets arrive in the Malakbal system and establish a colony on the moon of Lydon. This colony is built on top of ruins left behind by a long-extinct celestial civilization. They were called the Detoneer. Life here is rough, and one man, Orion Aslan, sets out to explore the galaxy in hopes of helping Lydon. His first exodus through the gates changed his life and perception of everything. He saw ruins of ancient celestial civilizations and saw abandoned worlds that were both astonishing and horrifying. Through his journeys, he realized how detached the Celestials are from humans and how much disdain they have for the humans that still arrive. When he returned to Lydon after his first mission, he was changed, realizing that the true goal as a traveler is to help humanity survive. Orion Aslan went from a simple mercenary to becoming a legendary traveler. His missions also changed. They became more daring, more treacherous, and more successful. With every new Exodus mission, Orion and his crew went deeper and deeper into uncharted areas of celestial-controlled space. They risked everything to secure critical technology and resources. They even found technological scraps left behind by the Celestials. They repurposed these remnants, reusing them to give themselves a better chance. And Orion's journeys and success inspired other travelers and traveler dynasties to join the cause. And while each mission helped humanity, each new mission also provoked the Celestials even more. These missions and their impact made Orion Aslan a hero. He became pivotal in fortifying humanity's position against the Celestials. He also became Lydon's leader, and under his leadership, warring factions reconciled, failing infrastructure was strengthened. Travelers multiplied in numbers, and because of this, they pushed the boundaries of their expeditions. He then formed the Aslan dynasty, a network of devoted followers who ruled over Lydon in his absences. Through this new dynasty and Orion's Exodus missions, he transformed society and guided its transformation. Throughout all of this, he aged very little, and while he didn't age, he did feel the tolls of time dilation. Watching his son Gideon grow older and older, and more distant from his absent father. Despite this sacrifice, Orion continued, knowing humanity's survival was more important. All of Lydon looked to him for guidance and salvation, and he was only able to help the people of Lydon because of his missions. He found powers and technology that no human could wield, remnants of lost celestial civilizations that could help humanity. He was using the celestial technology against the Celestials, and he would continue at any cost. Travelers were the pillar of hope for humanity. and they risked a lot to find these remnants. Alongside technology that could be used, they also found nightmares and death. The Apocalypse Titan is one of those discoveries. This massive automated war machine was used to decimate entire planets during the Formation Wars. But after the Formation Wars, these Titans went into hibernation, 15,000 years ago, vanishing beneath the surface of the planets they destroyed. These are a sought-after relic, with travelers wanting to study or even wake a slumbering Titan to use against the Celestials, who used them in their own wars. Alongside Titans, ghosts can be found everywhere across the galaxy. These ghosts are mechanical constructs built by the Celestials to function as servants, laborers, guardians, and soldiers. They were mass-produced and unleashed on enemy worlds. They were not sentient and were easily expendable. And while they can remain dormant for thousands of years, they can also be reawakened. These ghosts are one of the many obstacles travelers face on their journeys, and many travelers die searching for these remnants to use for humanity's advantage. Wanting to use every advantage against the Celestials, travelers also came across silicates on their Exodus missions. Silicates, thought to be the one true alien life form in the Centauri cluster, were symbiotes that transformed the humans who evolved with the silicates. Their egg would hatch when touched by a human, and the bond would awaken. If the humans survived the joining, they would transcend by becoming a new weapon to use against the Celestials. They were called daemons. Their skin would become translucent but impervious. Their musculature would evolve, and their mind would change alongside these physical improvements. But their mind would become darker and more violent. The galaxy is a dangerous place, made more dangerous by the failing Archimedes engine supporting Lydon. A technological virus known as the Rot is slowly degrading Lydon's advanced technology, including all of the critical machinery used to sustain Lydon's life. The planetary engines are beginning to fail, threatening the entire future of Lydon and its civilization. Realizing this threat, Orion Aslan and many other travelers embark on Exodus missions to try to save Lydon in hopes of repairing the engine. In his absence, Gideon, the son that had been slowly drifting apart from his father, seizes the opportunity of Orion's disappearance and takes control of the Aslan dynasty, and then declares himself ruler of Lydon, forcing June, a mere child and Orion's youngest, to go into hiding. And this is where June Aslan, Exodus's protagonist, begins their story. Just before leaving for his latest Exodus, Orion and Ava, someone born of celestial heritage, though we don't know the exact details just yet, give birth to their perfect genetically created heir, June Aslan, in 2476. Created with both celestial and human DNA, June is supposed to be the bridge between humans and celestials. With June's unique DNA, they are able to access celestial technology through the power of neural induction. As Orion Aslan's heir, and as the only half-human, half-celestial, it is your fate to follow in the footsteps of Orion Aslan, the great traveler. As June, like Orion, you are also trying to repair the engine and save Lydon. June is humanity's last hope, and that is where the story of Exodus begins. June is fully customizable and voiced, and their story will be our first introduction to the world of Exodus. And that is just about everything we know leading up to the game's events. All of this information is from the website and the novel The Archimedes Engine, and if you're interested in this world and learning more about Exodus, make sure to check out the novel and the many short stories up on the Exodus website. The Archimedes Engine takes place after the events of the game, but it still has really good insight into the game and the Crown Dominion. I highly recommend it. The second book, The Helium Sea, is the second novel of the duology, and while we don't have a date for that yet, I'm hoping it comes out sometime in 2025. The world of Exodus is so far being built up to be really, really big. There is a lot of topics that I didn't cover in this video, just because they've already revealed so much. And they're also coming out with a tabletop RPG book. It's called the Exodus Traveler's Handbook, and I'll link it below if you want more information on that. But it seems like they're really investing in this world and making the scale of it really big. So I am so excited. And again, I didn't cover everything that there is because there's already so much. And we don't even have the game in our hands yet. As far as releases, I will be posting this video the morning of the Game Awards. So hopefully by the time people watch this video, the Game Awards have already happened and there was a new trailer drop. Fingers crossed that Exodus really is coming out in 2025, like I keep expecting. So if you enjoy lore videos, story recaps, character backgrounds, and timeline breakdowns, make sure to subscribe for more. Thank you to my channel subscribers, thank you to my Patreon members, thank you all so much for your support, and see you next time.